Derek Lewis opens with a switch knee.
I got the chicken, the turkey, ham. Shit, what else I'm fucking with? Nah, that's about it.
I was eating a burger.
Went downtown for a cup of tea and I saw two skinheads looking at me. I'll give them headbutts. Headbutts.
3, 2, 1, go.
Let's go, boys. Appreciate you clicking this vid, episode 193, UFC Edmonton, and shout out to our latest sub, actually a Canadian resident, so much love from the Meat Boys. And yo, scroll to the comments if you're in a hurry. The breakdown timestamps will be there at some point, but UFC 308 was last week, Meat Boy. Your boy went 4-2. I missed Petrosian. We missed Oral By. You went 3-3. Oral By obviously missed, and as did Whitaker and Max. So before we touch on the L of a Meatlock, a split decision nonetheless, but Max got KO'd. You thought he would get it done. What did you make of the meat event versus Topuria? And is Topuria the pound for pound best fighter in the world?
Yeah, no, I don't know about pound for pound best fighter in the world, but he's definitely the best and could potentially be the best, 145er that we've ever seen. I mean, nobody does that to Max, nobody does that to Volk, and nobody does that to a lot of the opponents he's been doing it to. So he's either on some Conor McGregor, make it till you break it, fake it till you make it type of thing. And then once he makes it, it's just all downhill because he's so dang rich, like Conor. Because Conor kind of was like anything he spoke, it became reality until he hit a certain threshold, and then it went to party, 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 and less actual kicking butt. And Conor basically has only won one fight since that day, which was like 10 years ago, which is pretty crazy to think about. So I don't know if Topuria is going on that path or if he really is that guy. Like I really just don't know. Is he the next Silva that goes on a 18 fight absolute tear, looks unstoppable, or is he gonna be the champ? Defend it a few times and then go the Conor route and then become a bum in like 5 years or maybe 1 or 2 years. I don't know, but as far as I've seen, if he touches anyone, they go out. He's probably going to be the best fighter we've ever seen for the next 10 years because he's 25. He'll probably reign for 5 years, and then maybe that new gen in 10 years will take over.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because he is still so young, and I love how you phrased it. Make it till you break it and fake it till you break it. It feels like this is just the beginning of the Topuria reign, and he's talking like he wants to fight Islam. He wants to submit Islam, and I mean, that sounds crazy at face value, but this is a guy who is calling what he's going to do to legends and going out there and doing it. So great stuff from Topuria. He was up on the scorecards. We thought that was pretty fascinating. He was up 2-0 on 2 judges. Another judge had it 1-1, but the fight was close until it just the ultimate meat bomb. Slept Max in that 3rd round, but impressive stuff from Topuria nonetheless. How about that co-meet though? Whitaker versus Hamzat. We hadn't seen Hamzat in a year. We weren't sure if he was going to even make the fight, but he made the fight. He ended the fight in about 4 minutes, and Whitaker's face was essentially smushed and shattered. What'd you make of the co-meet, and is Hamzat going to take out DDP next?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. DDP's got kind of a handful of sand, and he's so bad he wins every fight somehow. So nothing will go by me on that one. But if what we saw is what Hamzat truly is, if that was not a fluke, I mean, he's kind of shown that none of it is a fluke. I just don't know how DDP is going to survive. Like, Hamzat might be the scariest fighter on this planet Earth right now. The dude's so scary. He's ripping dudes' faces in half in milliseconds. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I was very sad. I said, oh my God, Whitaker just took a dive. He got paid off by, the officials or whoever paid him off, the gambling guys, and like he just took a dive. That wasn't a choke. That wasn't a crank. That was a millisecond. But then you see his teeth are dangling, his jaws snapped, and it's like, okay, what is this guy's diet? Hamzat said he has a brand new team. Clearly, he got the best team because he said that he's got, a scientist and a nutritionist and all this crazy stuff. Where I'm like, okay, sure, Hamzat, sure. Well, hey, now I'm sold. I just don't know any human that's going to beat Hamzat. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets the 170, the 185, the 205, and the heavyweight. Like, it would not surprise me if he becomes the first, 5-time champ.
Yeah, it's really not crazy to say because I mean I'm just, as you say, heavyweight champ. I'm picturing a Hamzat versus John Jones fight, and that sounds kind of interesting to me, to be honest. So you mentioned new team, yet same outcome, and maybe even a more impressive outcome, somehow outdoing what he had done in the last few years. Hamzat's officially back. If he fights against DDP next, I'm taking Hamzat by lock. I don't see DDP finding a way to YOLO out a victory in that one because I don't know, it just seems like Hamzat's on a different level. But nonetheless, we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the meatlock. It's two straight L's for us, Meat Boy. Our boy Oral by took a split decision loss, but in all actuality, that should have been unanimous. He definitely lost 2-1. It was a pretty easy fight to score, but somehow a judge rendered Oral by the victor in that third round, which made no sense given that Oral by was basically dead to rights, and a lot of judges would have stepped in and called the contest, but they allowed him to take a prolonged beating. What'd you make of the Meatlock L? Did we underestimate Rabisti? Is Rabisti back, or is Oral by maybe just not as good as we thought he was?
Yeah, we knew Ribisi's good. We know he's a one pump chomp, but I mean, it's crazy to see somebody bounce back that quickly and they become a two pump chomp. Like he didn't really gas until the last minute or so. I
Mhm.
actually thought, Oralbao was actually gonna get the finish. That's what it kind of seemed like. Kind of seemed like the path was he's gonna gas out and he's gonna get a finish. But Oralbao's gas tank was on the same level and he couldn't get past the two pump chump himself. So that was a miscalculation. But Orbai is very good, and it was a good matchup. But Rabisi's definitely leveled up. He is no joke. But clearly he got the gas tank situation figured out.
Yeah, he did seem to rectify the one round availability that he had previously. And you're totally right. In that third round, there was about 80 seconds for Oralby to work with and get that YOLO finish. But Rabisi managed to survive because, like you said, both guys had basically empty gas tanks. And it was just the 4 minutes and 24, around 4 minutes of damage that Oralby received in the early parts of the third round that really swung that third round and ultimately the fight. But nonetheless, we have a meatlock in store for this week. It's UFC Edmonton. Should we swap it through, jump straight to the lock, and get
Yep.
this thing back on track?
Yep. This is the lock of locks.
Yes, swap us through that, meat boy. You see the text. Brandon Moreno's taking on Amir Albazi, and this is an interesting fight because on paper, what do you see from Albazi? The guy is 5-0, 6-0 in the UFC, on an absolute tear, beating guys by finish, getting some decisions. But when you really take a deep dive into his resume, the most recent fight was against Kai Kara France, and it was a split decision victory for Albazi in a main event. And I believe 18 out of 20 media members scored the fight for Care France, and 10 of those 18 scored it 49-46, meaning a majority of the media members thought that not only did Kai Care France win that fight, but he dominated across 4 out of 5 rounds. So we see Albazi with the recent win, the win streak intact, but that most recent win is very controversial at best because he didn't win that fight. And the wins before that, I mean, Alessandro Costa is a hype beast, up and coming fighter in the division, but definitely unproven to date. And Francisco Figueiredo got finished. Absolutely awful. Nepotism, the only reason that guy was in the UFC. And then Zelgas Jamogulov, who never won a fight in the last probably 5 contests that he made in the UFC. So the Albazi victories aren't great, and he's taken on Moreno, who we like him as a favorite in this one as simply a level set, because while we see the win streak on one end and the fact that Brandon Moreno has lost 2 straight, they're 2 split decisions, and they're against Brandon Royval and Pantoja, arguably the 2 best guys in the division. So what do you like mostly about this meatlock meat event where Moreno's just going to provide an absolute levels test for this hype beast, and how do you see Moreno exposing Albazi in this one and making this simply a non-competitive fight?
Yeah, man, I just honestly think that Moreno is not done. He's the real deal. Every time he has an L, he bounces back twice as hard. Uh, I don't know. There's nothing like you said. There's nothing too like. It seems impressive on paper, but split decision versus Kaikar France. Kaikar France. I mean, it's not the GOAT. Brandon Moreno arguably is the GOAT of the division. Uh, but it seems to be that there is a little Pantoja in the middle. But I don't know. There's nothing that shocks me or says wow. just very simple. The fights aren't that crazy. Brandon Moreno's fought all the best. I mean, he's fought Brandon Royval. I mean, you name it. Brandon Moreno's fought him. He's fought Figgy 3 times, beat him twice, which is crazy because Figgy Loki right now is peaking and is the GOAT. I think this is a giant levels test. I think the Prince is going to get submitted or snuffed. Honestly, I think in the championship rounds, 4-5, and I think it's very surprising to see that anyone thinks that this guy's going to beat Brandon Moreno, to be honest.
Yeah, great stuff. And, the odds were initially pretty close. They were closer to a pick 'em. They have since swelled later in the week with Moreno obviously clocking in, as you see, minus 175 favorite. But the early action is going to Moreno's way because it seems like the odds were just a little off, right? Like the fact that Albazi was at a pick 'em against Moreno, we thought to be a little crazy. And we're getting in Moreno a little bit late in the game. But if you anticipate Moreno getting a finish in this one, it would be the first person to finish Albazi, right? The guy only has one loss. He lost to Jose Torres in Brave FC way back in 2019, and that fight went the distance. So if you're taking Moreno by finish in this meatlock, do you think that it's later on, and is submission going to be the best pathway?
For Moreno, I could see decision, I could see knockout, I could see submission. This guy does have a lot of submissions on his belt, so maybe a knockout is more doable or could be a decision. But I don't know. I just feel like a 4 or 5 round finish is probably pretty juicy for Brandon Moreno in this one.
Yeah, and the hype beast opponent who is one big win away from securing a real name in the UFC is the best fight to get Moreno back on track because this is one of the biggest stars in the UFC, right? I mean, this is the guy that's arguably the face of Mexico MMA, and for a solid year, maybe two, he seemed to be one of the top three stars in the promotion. So you have to imagine that this headlining opportunity in Edmonton is specifically designed for Brandon Moreno and not Al Bazzi. Although I've seen some argue that Al-Bazzi is going to be the one that they try to push after this contest. We just think this is going to be too much of a levels test, and Moreno cashes as a meatlock. And Tapology is overwhelmingly agreeing with the Meat Boys, 65% going with Moreno. Majority beige, though, they think the decision is most likely. Final call, you going decision or finish for Moreno?
I'm gonna go KO fourth round Moreno.
KO fourth round, book that first short. Nonetheless, we're keeping it simple, throwing down 175 to net 100. Get us back on track, get the meatlock sizzling again, and the 109th overall victory. But swap us through, Meatboy. There's more interesting ones to come. Mike Malott versus Trevin Giles. We ready to rip that?
Oh yeah.
Swap us through then. Mike Malak taking on Trevin Giles, and this fight I actually think is kind of interesting, Meat Boy, because Mike Malak, the UFC was trying to pump him, trying to make this guy the next big face of Canadian MMA, and he took a loss to Neil Magny in a fight that he was dominating. Right, he totally decimated Neil Magny in those first 2 rounds. But Neil Magny, if you don't finish him, he's going to be there late, and he's going to be most damaging late as well. And Mike Malak found that out the hard way because all he had to do was survive 15 more seconds. But the ground and pound that Neil Magny was putting on him, and the fact that Malak simply lacked any energy down the stretch, resulted in him picking up his first UFC loss. And it was his only career loss other than the random loss to Hakeem Dawodu at featherweight way early on in his career in 2014. But he had that fat win streak. He had wins over guys like Adam Fugit, Mickey Gall, Johan Lamas. I mean, pretty bad fighters. And now he's taken on Trevin Giles, who is plus 245. He's got 12 UFC fights. 6-6 is his record. And he's got some bad losses, obviously, but he does have wins over Superman Span, strangely enough. And he beat Roman Dolidze in a dominant fight for him. And honestly, one of Roman Dolidze's few UFC losses. So he's got a couple sneaky good wins, and his losses, I mean, listen to the guys he's lost to recently. Dricus du Plessis, Michael Morales, who's undefeated, Bon Fim, who you're very bullish on, and Carlos Prates, who is knocking everyone out and has a headline opportunity coming up in a few weeks. So is this a fight at plus 245 where Trevin Giles might have some serious life, especially after Mike Malak just got exposed by Neil Magny? Who you taking?
Yeah, no, those are all really good points because clearly Trevin Giles has fought an insane level of caliber fighters compared to Mike Malak. Um, it seems almost like they're trying to give him, Mike Malak a second go at, getting into that top or that bigger name. Like, hey, Magnus Chubis, maybe this guy. They're looking at because this guy he's pretty much a gatekeeper, right? Like, I mean, he's got some good wins, he's got some questionable losses, but he's fighting good fighters. Is Mike Malak that next guy? Is he a bomb fiend? I don't know. I guess we will find out. I don't know. This is a very tough one. I think it's closer than what people think, but I'm gonna go Mike Malak purely on hype, and the UFC machine knows what they're doing, and this is maybe the right moment, right fighter to get him to where they need him to go, because they're gonna act like the Neil Magny fight didn't just happen, and he got absolutely ragdolled in that third round.
Yeah, good stuff. The UFC machine usually puts these fighters that they want to promote in winnable situations. And the last time they put Mike Malak on a Canadian card, he basically stole the show, right? It was UFC 289. It was on that Vancouver card, and he got the second round finish over Adam Fugit and was essentially carrying the promotional load throughout the entire week. So you wonder if Mike Malak is bringing that same sort of energy and hype for this main card, and you wonder if the UFC believes that a guy like Trevin Giles is the opponent that can get him back on track, like you said. And Tapology agrees with you. Mike Malak, overwhelmingly 90% they're taking him. It's divvied up brown, copper, or beige for the submission, KO, or decision, but only 10% are going with Trevin Giles. If you're taking Mike Malak, again, the method of victory is pretty split. Does he get the finish, or is it a snooze fest?
If he gets the finish, it'll probably be by submission, but I could honestly totally see a snoozer.
Yeah, snoozer, and I'm curious to see how the wrestling looks like in this one. And I don't know, me boy, something tells me Trevin Giles is going to find a way to get this one done. And I would never advise parting with your money on a Trevin Giles fight because he's the type of fighter where as soon as you back him, he's going to get absolutely smashed. But right when you write him off, he's going to find a way to pull off a sneaky W. So I think in this fight where he's plus 245, only 10% of Tapology is backing him. Trevin Giles, I think, finds a way to get a W in this one. And I wouldn't say it's my most confident pick because I agree with you. I think this is an opportunity by the UFC's design for Mike Malak to get back on track. I just don't know if Mike Malak is that good, and Trevin Giles is going to spoil the party in a sense. So I'm taking Trevin Giles. I'll go by close decision, but don't consider it a confident pick. Any last thoughts on that one?
No, I totally agree. Uh, Makes sense, and yeah, this is definitely a sus one on both sides, nonetheless.
Dually sus for sure. Swap us through, Meat Boy, because it's one of my favorite fighters. It's my boy, Marc Andre Barriault, aka the Power Bar, who, when we were, preparing for these breakdowns, totally forgot that my boy, the Power Bar, just got absolutely slept by your boy, Joe Pyfer, in a fight that didn't even last 90 seconds. So I saw this one on paper, Power Bar versus Dusty Dink, Dustin Stoltzfus, and it screamed immediate Power Bar lock, but once I was reminded of that Piper KO, I'm a little bit more hesitant now because Dustin Stoltzfus, aka Dusty Dink, I mean, this guy finds ways to sometimes get YOLO finishes when his back is against the wall. I mean, that perfect example is the fight against Puna Soriano, where he randomly picks up performance of the night despite having lost 4 of 5 UFC fights. So he did, however, rebound and get smoked by Bruno the Hulk immediately after, though. So Dusty Dink is a dude who's all over the place. He's 2-5 in the UFC, so the record isn't great. Where Powerbar is 6-7. So in this one, are you taking my boy the Powerbar at minus 205, or do you see serious life for Stoltzfus at plus 170?
I definitely see some life at 170. Dustin Solfus is, he's a very solid fighter. Like you said, he beat Puna Healy, Dwight Grant, some very, very notable wins. But, some of
Body
the,
snatcher.
yeah, the body snatcher. Some of these losses, though, and then you know, Dustin Solfus beat Joe Pyfer. Just think about that. But I don't know if it's me or what, but everyone kind of knows that Dusty D low-key kind of sucks, but he got lucky beating Joe Pyfer with that slam and breaking his arm. And is it me, or does it seem like that they're trying to have Dusty beat a guy that also Body Bags beat, and then, oh, we can have Body Bags refight them to, one, great marketing, get the win back for Body Bags, but this is a layup for Body Bags. And so, I don't know. I could totally see Dusty getting this win, and then a rematch versus Joe Pyfer or something, maybe one more fight, then Joe Pyfer. But it does seem like that they're trying to bring him back. Like, I don't know. It just feels like they're trying to push Dustin because, I mean, Dustin's record in the UFC is not that great. He's a great fighter though, and he's had really great moments in these fights, but he's always come up short. Like, he beat Joe Pyfer, great. Then he loses to Kyle Dawkins, then Rodolfo Vieira, then GM3, then beats Dwight Grant, and then loses to Magomedov, then wins Punahili, and now gets smoked by the Hulk. So they're like, all right, sucks. He's good. He sucks. Let's bring him back. We need him for body bag Piper, peanut butter Joey, and let's get him a dub so they can scrap for ultimate storytelling. That's what it feels like. Because why is Dustin in the UFC? I'm just gonna be honest.
Yeah, a lot of great points. And again, you mentioned the 2-5 UFC record, which is not great, but similar to fighters we broke down earlier, I mean, some of the losses are pretty solid, right? Bruno the Hulk Fajeda, probably a top 20 guy. Abus Magomedov looked pretty sick over the weekend. GM3 somehow always finds ways to win fights. Adolfo Vieira peaking, and Kyle Dawkins at one point was picking up W's as well. So not like they're the worst losses ever from Stoltzfus. And like you said, he does have that YOLO, arguably lucky finish over Joe Pyfer. And I like how you're thinking 10 steps ahead. Perhaps this is the opportunity for Stoltzfus to get the win over Powerbar, who just got slept by Pyfer. Get that rematch. Two Pennsylvania dudes, right? Maybe you throw them in a Pennsylvania Fight Night meet event. Allow those two dudes to throw down for the state. And I don't know. I think you could be onto something. However, that formula requires him going through the power bar, who, again, he's lost recently, got slept, lost that close split decision to Chris Curtis, but this is a dude who also picks up levels test victories against guys who are slightly worse than him, right? Eric Anders, Cuban Missile Crisis, Jordan Wright, Dalcha not champion. A lot of mid fighters that Marc-Andre Barriault was just slightly better. So although Dusty Dink has fought a higher level of competition, is Powerbar going to be just slightly better than Dusty Dink's? Or if Dustin's better, what's the method of victory for him?
I think if Dusty Dink wins, I think he wins by submission or decision. You know, Powerbar, he's got a lot of KO wins, few KO losses, one submission, but his submission game is lacking. He has one submission win, meaning he's not really a threat down there. Dustin Solfus is no joke when it comes to grappling. He has 6 submissions, 6 decisions, 2 KOs. So the power ain't there. The power bars eat power bars that day, so I doubt he gets overpowered. But he could get submitted with the power. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, I like decision. I like submission a lot for Dusty Dink. But yeah, I think if it hits the mat, there's no threat other than wrestling and pressure from power bar. If it hits the mat, there's pressure from wrestling, top pressure, punching, but also the submission game's no joke with Dusty. So I like that play.
Yeah, it's a great point too, because Dusty Dink is one of those dudes who might not be the most physically imposing guy, but he sometimes is like sneaky strong and in fights stronger than guys you might not anticipate. And if he has any sort of strength advantage over the power bar, then look for that early takedown. And once down there, I mean, you got to be feeling good if Dustin can get a takedown in the first few minutes, because when power bar's on the back foot, when he's on the bottom, he's not as effective, clearly, and Stoltzfus could have a pathway for sure. I see where your head's at, me boy. 83% though is rolling with the power bar, 17% going with Dusty Dink. You know I got to pick the power bar. I do like Stoltzfus odds, and I do like your method of victory because I see a world where that definitely happens. I'm going to take power bar by close decision or maybe a third round finish in a fight where Dustin just can't absorb the damage that Barriault is laying on him. But we have seen Barriault gas, and maybe he won't even be as dangerous late against a guy like Dusty, who is pretty tough and is pretty durable despite all the UFC losses. So I'll take Powerbar. Not the most confident pick, and technically like the Stoltzfus odds, but for me, boy, I got Powerbar. Any last odds?
No, it's a great fight, fun fight nonetheless.
Yeah, swap us through them, meat boy, because it's some heavyweight meat slingers, and the fight with the most fascinating odds, I guess you could say, to us at least. Janata Diaz, minus 166 is a favorite, and he's 2-0 in the UFC, a Dana White Contender Series standout. He got the contract by finishing Eduardo Neves, who was a very hyped up hype beast, who turned out to be very bad, but I'm a little bit surprised you were too that Diaz is minus 166 favorite over Derek Lewis, who 28-12-1 is the Black Beast, going for his 20th UFC win. It's his 30th UFC fight. The guy has the most KOs in UFC history, and we know Diaz is a guy who all he can do is strike, right? He's not going to go out there and take you down. He's not going to beat you with anything other than his strikes. And Black Beast, meanwhile, is the most lethal striker in heavyweight division if you're judging based on KOs acquired. So in this fight, what was most surprising to you about the Diaz minus 166 odds? Do you see a world where he goes out there and KOs Derek Lewis, or at plus 140, is this another juicy dog opportunity for Derek Lewis, similar to his last fight against Rodrigo Nascimento?
Yeah, the odds were very surprising to see, and like I'm like, am I missing something? Do I not know something? Did I miss a video or a interview or something? Because Derek Lewis should absolutely just knock this dude out. I mean, what is so special about this guy? Uh, he's an okay fighter, maybe technical, but Derek Lewis just has to touch you one time. As we saw, sometimes the fastest or most technical fighters aren't the best, aka Topuria versus Max, Topuria versus Volk. They were all faster, but it takes only one shot to land, and that's what Topuria did. I mean, yeah, that's what Topuria did. Landed that one shot, knocked him out. Derek Lewis is the master at that. He's just gonna wait. Maybe he's losing first, second, third round. Whenever it gets to it, all it takes is one hit from him, and this guy is going down. And at those odds, having that kind of X factor power like a Topuria, it's like if those guys are the dogs and they have that X factor, there's no reason not to hammer that. And these odds just seem skewed unless Derek Lewis is that bad, which I'm like, he's still pretty dang good. Like, yeah, he is getting older, but he's still Derek Lewis, the Black Beast.
100%, and he's won 2 of his last 3 fights, both by finish, both in fights that he was a sizable dog, and his one loss sprinkled in there was against Jailton Almeida, where Jailton just got 5 takedowns, sat on him Snorlax style for 25 minutes, and the fight was over start to finish. But one of those stylistic matchups where you could anticipate that fight going that way. Diaz is just an absolute YOLO meat slinging striker, just like Derek Lewis. And in those contests, historically, Derek Lewis had some success, but there was one that I wanted to highlight, which is that Tai Tuivasa fight. And Tuivasa is a guy who goes out there and swings YOLOs. And in that fight, Derek Lewis got knocked out. So is there any chance that Diaz is going to be able to have that same iron chin that Black Beast will have, but he'll have the durability, the sustained power, and ultimately the ability to knock out Derek Lewis? And if he doesn't knock out Derek Lewis, is there any way Diaz wins this fight?
And if he doesn't knock out Derek Lewis, he's getting knocked out. That's kind of how I see it, to be honest. Um, I'd be very surprised if he beats Derek Lewis. I mean, this guy does have a very impressive record. It's all KOs, but you got to think about this. Except for his most recent versus Carl Williams, he went to decision, which is very questionable. So if he can't put Carl out, why would he put Derek Lewis out? That's kind of how I look at it. And his UFC debut was versus Austin Lang, which we already know how good that guy is, and he KO'd him very early, very often. Um, it's just disrespectful at this point. Derek Lewis is in a whole other caliber than Austin Lang. I'm sorry, and I just think this guy's about to get absolutely snuffed first exchange, and it's gonna be like, wait, why are these odds even favored for this guy? Like, I'm so confused. This is very confusing. There's got to be something I'm missing, or I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, Diaz did get that win over Austin Lane, send Robelis to Spain straight to PFL. So maybe we shouldn't disrespect the homie Austin Lane, who is back on the winning ways. But nonetheless, in this one, I'm with you all the way. I'm seeing it the exact same way as you. This seems just like Lewis as a dog in the fight against Nascimento, in the other fight against Deligma. Seems like a juicy opportunity. And Tapology agrees, me boy. 62% is rolling with the Black Beast, 38% going with Janata. And it's basically all brown on both sides. I kind of buy that. I think Lewis is going to find a way to get a KO in this one. Whether it's early or whether it's often is to be determined. But like you said, Derek Lewis is a guy who is dangerous at any minute. I mean, just look back to that fight against Volkov where he got smoked the entire fight across. I forget if it was 5 rounds or 3, but it was start to finish domination, and Derek Lewis lands an absolute sleeper in the last 20 seconds of the contest. So always dangerous, regardless of the damage absorbed. I like Derek Lewis by finish. If you were to guess, is it first round or third round if Black Beast gets a finish?
I think it's first round. Black Beats gets finished.
First round finish, I'm probably with you. Let us know in the comments if you're taking the Black Beast, if you're taking him by finish, or are we sleeping on Janata Diaz, and this is the guy who's going to smoke Derek Lewis and perhaps send him to go fight Francis again in the PFL. Let us know down below, but swap us through, Meat Boy, because it's the co-meet. It's one that I'm very curious to get your perspective on. Aaron Blanchfield taking on Rose Namajunas, and Namajunas is a slight dog in this one, plus 110, 13-6 overall. We know her as the former champ at 115 though, and now she's fighting at flyweight, and she's 2-1 in the division. Her debut was spoiled, right? Manon Fiorot really dominated her across the entire contest, but since then she's rebounded with 2 great wins, unanimous victories over Amanda Hebos in a fight that was not very competitive, and then the fight most recently against Tracy Cortez, where a lot of people were taking T City to stay undefeated, but Rose found a way to get that one done, and now she's taking on Blanchfield, who everyone had kind of anointed as the new GOAT of the division. She was on that fat win streak, 6 fights in a row, but then she ran into Manon Fiorot, and Fiorot made her look like she didn't even belong in the proper weight class, to be honest with you, because Fiorot really dominated that contest, and that was one that I know surprised you a lot, because you thought Blanchfield would go in and just ragdoll Manon, but Manon, to me at least, proved to be on just a different tier than both of these competitors here, but these are the next 2 best below her. So are you taking Erin Blanchfield in this one to get back on track, rediscover her winning sauce, or is Rose Namajunas going to be too much of a levels test and Thug Rose is going to be the next title challenger?
Yeah, both these girls have something in common. They both lost to Manon recently. But man, I don't know. This one's very interesting. I like the stylistic matchup, but like, what was shown to me with the Aaron recently fight is that Aaron's probably gonna lose this fight. It's pretty much the same matchup, except maybe not as big of a girl, but arguably just as good of a striker. So maybe the strength, maybe she can bully her. But how I look at it is, I mean, Rose just beat the brakes off Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez low key beat the brakes long time ago off of Aaron Blanchfield in Invicta 2019. So not that long ago. So if I mean, I know MMA math isn't a thing, but in theory, if Tracy Cortez could get it done convincingly, decision, Rose Namajunas is one of the best fighters in the world. Should easily get this done. It was clear that anyone that's kind of a complete fighter, that Aaron Blanchfield's kind of hits the bag, you know, craps on her dinner plate and fumbles the bag. So I think cold blooded is warm blooded this season, and she's not gonna get this one done. I think she might get cut to power slap.
Quite the quick downfall for cold-blooded Aaron Blanchfield if she does in fact lose this fight and go straight to BKFC. But nonetheless, if you're taking Thug Rose in this one, meat boy, what do you think the pathway is going to be, and where does Rose have the decided advantages? Because we know Blanchfield is a woman who's trying to close the distance, take you down, keep you down, work some ground and pound, maybe get a submission, or at worst, just hold you down and get that decision. But do you see Thug Rose being able to stuff her relentless takedowns? Do you see this fight hitting the mat and Thug Rose being able to attack with her jiu-jitsu or at a minimum escape those positions? Like, how do you anticipate this fight playing out stylistically if you do lean Thug Rose? What's this fight look like?
I think it's gonna be very similar to the Tracy Cortez fight. I think all the takedowns, they're either gonna get stuffed, or if it does go, Rose is gonna get back up, or Rose is gonna be threat and possibly submit her or almost submit her, and then force it to get back up. She's gonna reverse it, etc. I think Rose probably wins by decision. That's probably her most probable outcome in my opinion. Aaron, I think if she wins, she maybe could get a TKO ground and pound, maybe a submission, but I don't know. Rose is her biggest threat is all that experience she has. She's fought the best of the best, and is Aaron Blanchard really someone she hasn't seen her face first? I don't see that. So I think this is gonna be an easy practice fight for Rose. It's gonna be a warm up, easy work, in my opinion.
Yeah, perhaps a warm up against cold blooded for sure. And it's fascinating, right? Because the UFC is clearly trusting Erin Blanchfield to be the next woman, right? She's the next challenger. Here's Rose right away, not even giving her a tune up opportunity. It's like straight back to a co meet against a former champ and arguably one of the legends of the division. But I'm kind of with you, meat boy. I think that if this fight was 3 rounds, I might lean Blanchfield because perhaps she could be a little bit more aggressive and not have to worry about that waning gas tank. But in that fight against Fiorot, I mean, she was gassed. She was dead to rights. And obviously, Fiorot was landing an offensive onslaught on her, which could have zapped her gas tank a little bit more quickly. But I guess I got to believe it I guess I got to see it to believe it that Aaron Blanchfield can be competitive in those later rounds. And when I don't see a pathway for Blanchfield finishing Namajunas, to me, I think she's going to lose the later rounds. And even though she might start strong and win round one, maybe even round two, I like what you said about Rose's experience and specifically her 5 round experience to find a way to out veteran Aaron Blanchfield in this contest. So I like Rose by decision or maybe a late finish. That's probably how I will play this one. Maybe separate dinks on a round 4 Rose finish, round 5 Rose finish, and the majority on decision. But I like Rose in this one. I like her as a dog. Her and Black Beast, 2 juicy dogs, eh?
Yeah, I do like that. Very juicy dogs, and also that's a parlay to look at. Parlays are sucker bets, but when they're two juicy ones, man, it's good to look at. But yeah,
Yeah, it could
it's
be the fillet for sure. I was gonna say to swap us through, but forgot that the meat lock was the meat event. So that's it for the week, Meat Boy. We broke down 5. Meat locks have been missing in 2 straight. Of course, it gets back on track with Moreno. Of the 5 breakdowns, are we going 5-0?
yeah. I think we're going. I would say 5-0. I think this is one of those
Someone's going
ones.
5-0, but it can't be both of us because your boy picked Trevin Giles and you have Mike Malak. So someone's got to win that snoozer of a contest, and there's a bunch of other interesting ones for sure. But any last thoughts, Meat Boy? UFC Edmonton?
No, fun fight, great fight. Throw in the comments who you picking and why. Smash that me subscribe.